Hello, everybody. I am attorney Ida Tyree Highfield, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham and have been for over 30 years. Today, our press conference is an opportunity, our being the League of Women Voters of the state of Alabama. Our press conference is an opportunity for speakers to highlight the services that their organization provides and why House Bill 194, sponsored by Representative Wes Allen, is bad for Alabama. So we have organizations here today standing together in solid opposition to this bill, and we're going to try and kill them.
That's right.
So we're going to start with me introducing and presenting to you the state president for the League of Women Voters of Alabama, Ms. Kathy Jones.
Good morning. Thank you for coming out this morning. And I wanted to say, today we're speaking out for Alabama's democracy as well as voting rights. During 2020, during the midst of a pandemic, we had record turnout, record voter turnout. We had record absentee voting, all with no voter fraud. Instead of celebrating this accomplishment, some of our state legislators are actually seeking new and more restrictive and unfair voting laws and election laws, which have no merit, and their only purpose is to make the voting experience more complicated and confusing than ever, and establishing criminal penalties for Alabamians who are only wanting to help others engage in the election process. The HB 194 bill, which is sponsored by Representative Wes Allen, is an example of a bad bill. It's a bill which causes harm while trying to fix a non-issue. First, it would prohibit poor, chronically underfunded communities from seeking nonpartisan grants to purchase equipment such as PPE, which is required to keep the poll workers as well as all the public safe. Second, HB 194 would prohibit officials and their staff from accepting help from volunteers or non-governmental officials, accepting help from volunteers or non-governmental organizations for election activities, such as voter outreach, voter registration, and voter education. Those three terms are called out specifically as prohibitions in this bill. The effect, if passed, would be to create uncertainty and doubt with the election officials and with our volunteers. We should be encouraging civic engagement and participation in our democracy without sowing fear, doubt, or division. The language of HB 194 bill is confusing, but its intent is clear. The League of Women Voters of Alabama calls upon the Alabama legislators to protect voter education and vote no on HB 194. Thank you so much.
We heard her well, vote no. So our next speaker is Virginia K. Solomon, Chief Executive Officer of the League of Women Voters of the United States.
Thank you to the Alabama League, Kathy, and all of the partners who are here today. I am Virginia K. Solomon. I'm the CEO of the League of Women Voters of the United States. And I am down here standing in solidarity and in support of the people of Alabama, for civil rights leaders here on the ground, for voting rights advocates on the ground, because this is not just happening in Alabama.
That's right.
But as it happens in Alabama, it does around the country.
That's right. Absolutely.
And see, I'm sick and tired of people ignoring what's happening in Alabama, the heart of the civil rights movement, the heart of the voting rights movement.
That's right.
And yet we still have legislators who think that we're living in 1952. See, guess what? Back then they fought, and we continue that fight today.
That's right.
And we will not stop adding criminal penalties, criminalizing voter education. My God. Criminalizing and placing penalties on people for registering voters.
That's right.
Come on. Criminalizing and putting penalties on people for doing basic education. How is that a crime? And I know that the people of Alabama are so many people are unaware of what this bill is. And so the point of this press conference today, the point of us coming from national organizations in solidarity with the local Alabamans, everybody in this room, is so that we can bring attention. And we will bring this attention not only here in Alabama, but around the country, because we want you to know that we stand in solidarity and we support you. And we ask everybody to make sure that you do everything you can to kill this bill. Thank you all.
Yes. Remember, knowledge is power. And that is the purpose of this conference today, to give knowledge so that you can know exactly, and you can first of all spread the word, because there are several people who won't know this unless we tell them. And so that's, once again, that's the purpose of today, so that we can listen to all our organizations nationally and here in the state of Alabama make this appeal. Our next speaker is well known. He's the executive director of the Greater Birmingham Ministries, which is located in Birmingham, Alabama, Mr. Scott Douglas.
Good morning.
Good morning.
No lie can live forever, but the big lie has lived far too long. And it lives on in HB 194. Big lies are devious inventions designed to deceive, confuse, and diminish. Deceive the public, confuse the courts, and diminish democracy. Read the bill. Read HB 194. It's intentionally obtuse, intentionally loose, and intentionally vague, but its intention, its real goal, is making expanding the practice of democracy intentionally difficult and intentionally arbitrary. It's about creating a chilling effect on voter participation and voter education. It said you can't legislate morality. That's abundant, but what's abundantly clear, as the Alabama legislation has done over and over again, you can legislate immorality. You can legislate exclusion. You can legislate the denial of history in our schools. You can legislate the denial of participation. And you can legislate preferential options for the rich, like Alabama's tax system. And you can legislate denial of adequate health care for Alabama working families. The bill sponsor, West Allen, is quoted as saying, he doesn't understand our concern. How can he not understand that our concern is for a participatory, inclusive, transparent, and accountable self-governance? What he doesn't understand is democracy. Our state motto is, we dare defend our rights. And we're here to defend our right to vote, the right to vote of all qualified Alabamians. We must block the offenses of these acolytes of fear and division. This bill will hurt all Alabamians, especially working Alabamians. When during the 1901 Constitutional Convention, it was asked the convention's president, John Knox, why would he impose the poll tax, since it would help hurt poor whites as well as blacks? And John Knox required, sir, the point is to establish white supremacy by law, unquote. No lie can live forever. Defeat HB 194.
All right.
No lie can live forever. Remember that. Our next organization is the Ordinary People Society. And the executive director is Rojicia Rushal. I want to say something for those in the listening audience, because you cannot see our audience here today. We have a lot of young people, young adults in this audience here. And they're from from Texas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and other states that I haven't mentioned yet. But I want to let you know that even our young people are here to stand on this line. Ordinary People Society.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here. So we're here today addressing the serious issue concerning the matters of voter suppression in the state of Alabama. particularly at this time, focusing on the direct impact that HB 194 has also on grassroots organizations such as the Ordinary People Society. This bill that was introduced by State Representative Wes Allen that would prohibit the state and local official that responsible for the conduct of the election from his employee from soliciting, accepting, or using donations of money, grants, property, or personal services from individuals or non-governmental entities for the purpose of funding certain elections. We all know it is a direct attack on grassroots organizing. Organizations such as TOPS has mobilized over 35,000 eligible voters throughout the state of Alabama in the past 10 years. Non-traditional funding for resources such as private sectors and individuals is a major part of how we conduct our mobilization efforts. As a recent fellow in the 2020 cohort of CZI, we were honored to receive funding from the philanthropist efforts of Mark Zuckerberg for general operation funds. And this is very saddening to see such a bill that proposes to block the support for funding to this type of effort. We all understand that voter suppression is real, and the actions that are being taken by state legislators who continue to suppress the vote does not come at any surprise. We recently had a conversation the last 2 weeks with Secretary of State John Merrill, and he tried to assure us that this bill would not affect voter education because he stated that voter education is at the core of our democracy. However, as we know, if we are not transparent and we don't push back on our state legislators, this bill will fall through the cracks. And as we continue to do that, let's not forget, as we're celebrating as well the 57th anniversary of Jubilee, that our voting rights have been under attack and always be under attack. But it is our job to speak up for our communities because it is a direct impact not only just on our organizational Black and Brown community, Latino communities, and even the LGBT community. And as we've seen in 2021, we have mobilized over 30,000 voters within the jails and prison. CZI was a very integral part of us getting inside those jails, registering to vote. For many of y'all know in 2017, the moral turpitude law came into effect by Pastor Kenny Glasgow. So we want to make sure that everybody has access to equal voting and that we're able to continue to do our work on the ground. Thank you guys for coming out.
Yes, this bill is a direct attack against grassroots organizers, like our groups here today, like our groups that are perhaps in our listening audience. And it's a bill that will impact our various organizations in educating people on how to register to vote and even in helping them to get to the polls. Our next speaker is a person who helps to make certain that this particular organization helps to make certain that even those persons who cannot see can get voter education and have the ability to get to the polls to vote. Her name is Barbara Manuel, and she is president of the National Federation of Blind People.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am here as stated representing the National Federation of the Blind. Accessibility is truly unattainable for most blind people. We realize information is given everywhere on the websites, but the websites most times are not accessible to the blind community. We want you to realize these things are really adverse to the blind community as well as other disabilities. We want you to know here in Alabama, transportation is truly, truly out of our reach. There are political figures who hold those townhouse meetings and other such things, but the blind cannot get there due to inaccessible transportation. I also want to share with you, the blind community truly, truly has limited income. Most of them really do not have computers or cannot afford internet services. These are just some of the disparities that we face as blind people in Alabama. We are so encouraged when organizations such as the League of Women Voters, will educate us and give us information so that we can make knowledgeable decisions that impact our lives. We need these organizations. We're asking everyone to please defeat Bill 194 and other bills, such as 239, bills that states that you will only have 4 minutes to cast a ballot. We are citizens of Alabama. We ask you, we implore the legislators to include everyone when you are making decisions that adversely affect the disabled community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is representing Voter Rights Restoration Organization, Faith in Action, Alabama. And his name is Gregory Clark.
The Lord executes righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed. Psalm 103:6. The Lord holds no partiality towards race, religion, or gender. He is, however, expressly partial towards any who are abused, mistreated, or downtrodden. He will liberate. He will vindicate. He will elevate them to their rightful place among the people. And what of those who would kneel down on the necks of God's people? What will come of those who would suppress their voices and depress their hearts? Zephaniah says the Lord will deal severely with them. Someone listening thinks that they've seen another get away from judgment after delivering injustice. The Lord says not so.
Come on.
Someone watching live believes that the election cycle will save them from answering to the people. The Lord says, not so.
That's right. Come on.
If you win your election, yet your soul is required of you, so that another serves in your place, then where's your victory?
Come on.
Victory is only gained when all of us can benefit. So I encourage our lawmakers to pass only legislation that helps all people, because any law that hurts someone will eventually hurt us all. All right.
Any law that hurts someone will eventually hurt us all. Powerful statement to remember. Our next speaker is Freddie C. Howard, who is a part of the Martin Luther King Parade Committee from Monroe County. Let's welcome him.
Good morning. Good morning. I want to say that any bill that continues to perpetuate putting some to sleep on voting is not a good bill.
Yes.
That's what H-194 is about. The continuation of getting into the minds of the people that depressing the vote can be done by a legislator or by law.
Come on.
But depressing the vote begins with you. If you take that pill of believing what they put in the law, you help depress the vote. What you do, all of us that are in here have not taken that pill. And we are sounding the alarm that it is a pill to put you to sleep of inactivity, non-involvement. It doesn't affect me, but it does affect you. Good friends, it's another way of forbidding groups, and destroying the rightful process that needs to be done to educate people who will assist people in getting registered to vote. Vote no on Bill H-194. Thank you.
So we see our consensus is continually vote no on Bill 194. We're going to hear now from Ms. Busby, who is Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union.
Good afternoon, all. I am Jatan Bosley of the ACLU of Alabama. I find it most appropriate that we are in a church today because we know that this is where the movement building begins. So we stand here today in Montgomery opposing HB 194, and I want to speak to that because we have to know the history of voting rights in this state. So we were at the forefront of 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. We saw the peeling back of the VRA in 2013 with Shelby v. Holder, and most recently, the state of Alabama decided that our redistricting lines were unconstitutional. The Supreme Court of the United States has paused on that decision. And so it is known now that justice delayed is justice denied for the people of Alabama because we will vote with gerrymandered districts. So we have to look at the arc of what voting rights means at this moment. Primarily HB 194. As everyone said here today, it is a direct attack on grassroots organizations who have been driving this work consistently, driving this work, getting people to the polls, driving people to the polls, focusing on voter education outside of election cycles. And today, we have to ensure and understand the importance of what that means. So when we're saying vote no, we are saying put that pressure on our state legislators, call your state representatives, call the individuals in these Senate committees, ensure that we are applying the pressure and the accountability to those at the highest levels of government. Because we have to understand that democracy is the cornerstone. And voting is the cornerstone, of our democracy.
That's right.
And when we focus on that, we can ensure that criminalizing things like this further perpetuate mass incarceration in a prison system that is overcrowded and dilapidated. We have to look at gender justice that focuses on issues that try to roll back the rights of women and trans folks and further disenfranchise our communities. So it is bills like this that perpetuate issues of white supremacy and discrimination in the state. And not only do we vote no, but we stand tall and continue this work in spite of it.
That's right.
Thank you so much.
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
I want to say this quote right before I call our next, one of our next speakers. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do, or I can do, is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing any of us can do is nothing. Now, there's this organization that was co-founded by two persons, and Cliff Albright and Natasha Brown. And the name of the organization is Black Voters Matter. And we're going to hear from Cliff Albright first.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'm so pleased to be here with you all today. I wish it was on a better occasion, but you know, anytime our dear friends at the League of Women's Voters calls, we answer.
Absolutely.
You know, we have been fighting with Sister Virginia and Sister Alma and Sister Io and the entire crew. We've been fighting this entire past year for voting rights legislation that we know we desperately need in this country, right?
Right.
And so we've been with them in multiple states. We've been with them in DC. We've been with them outside the White House. And that's why we are so glad to be here with the Alabama League today as we fight against this one bill, but not just 194. You know, the other bills, you heard the other bill talk about you only got 4 minutes to vote. They got another bill out there, 193, that attacks, that says that if somebody even gets paid to help, assist, in any way with somebody's absentee ballot, that is a felony. And so we see what's going on here. We see what's going on here, and there ain't nothing new about it. In fact, I didn't know that we were going to get moved over to the church today, but it's appropriate because I had a word on my mind, and some of y'all may be familiar with it, out of Ecclesiastes, where it said, "There's nothing new under the sun." Come on, and there ain't nothing new. Look to your neighbor and say, "Ain't nothing new." There ain't nothing new about what we're seeing happening with this legislation here, right in Alabama. This is the same Alabama that had us counting jelly beans in a jar, that had us doing poll tests and literacy tests. This is that same Alabama. Ain't nothing new. This is that same Alabama which years ago, when they were one of the first states to do this wave of voter ID and photo ID, at the same time that they did it, what did they do? They closed down the very departments of motor vehicles in Black Belt counties. So at the same time that they said you have to get this ID, they closed down the very place where you had to go to get it. Ain't nothing new. This is the same Alabama. You've heard it here today talking about the attack of Shelby and the attack on pre-clearance that was birthed in Shelby County, Alabama. That ain't nothing new. You heard about the recent case where they're attacking gerrymandering, or our ability to fight against gerrymandering. That is an Alabama case that is going to have an impact on this entire country. That's why we're so glad we got these students here from all these states, from South Carolina and Georgia and Texas and Tennessee and all the other states that are represented from DC. We're so glad because what happens in Alabama shapes the entire country. That's right. Come on. What happens, they say, as the South goes, so goes the country. Well, guess what? As Alabama goes, so goes the South. And so goes the rest of the country. Ain't nothing new. But I've got some good news. Because what people forget is that the other part of that word that I shared with you, that there ain't nothing new under the sun, right before that, what it says is the sentence right before that, it says, that which is done is that which shall be done. The translation of that is that which has happened in the past shall happen again. So you heard about that this is the 57th anniversary. Well, let's go back even before 65. We are sitting and standing in Montgomery, Alabama, a place which had the audacity to launch a boycott that was supposed to be a one-day boycott, but became more than a year right in this city. And in so doing, not only did it take down segregation on the buses here in Montgomery, it took down and launched an entire civil rights movement. That which has happened is that which shall happen again. Alabama, which in the Black Belt of Alabama launched a movement that led to voting rights that has benefited not just this state and not just this country. Y'all, there's people all over the world singing our songs and talking about our movement. That which has happened is that which shall happen again. And so I'm here to tell you, we got the power to fight against 194 and 193 and whatever the heck else it is that they want to throw our way. We got the power to be. Somebody say, vote no. We got the power to defeat this legislation, but not only that, not just to defeat the bad stuff, y'all. We got the power to create better legislation. In this state, we got legislation that does some needed things. Early voting, right? No excuse, vote by mail. We have to be having a conversation, not just about trying to hold on to stuff that we thought we wanted in 65, but how do we expand it and build a better vision of a better society, of a better democracy? We've got that power. And so if you want to get involved, you can do a couple things. One, join any one of these organizations that's up here because they're all doing mighty work. You can text us, you can text voting rights to 25225, right? If you can't remember the numbers, that spells black on your phone. 25225. And you can text us and you'll get information on how you can get involved in this battle, this 1 million for voting rights. And I'm here to tell you, I believe today now more than ever, I believe that we will win. Thank you.
Okay, next, the second co-founder, Latasha. Latasha?
Brother Cliff got me fired up over there. Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on, hold on.
to start in that space because oftentimes what we think is it's about having the right strategy, when in fact it's about having the right spirit. And the spirit of the movement, like, has not been defeated and will not be defeated. And I'm raising that in a context because Alabama has been a battleground. Alabama has been a state that has literally led itself to there have been 3 steps. If you look throughout the whole fight and attack on voting rights, there's always been 3 strategies. The first strategy has always been around making access to the ballot harder, that to restrict access to the ballot. The second strategy has always been around how do you create a culture of fear, right? How do you make people be fearful? The third strategy has always been how do you weaponize the administrative process where you actually take anti-democratic frames and make that legal. And that you use and you hide behind that. And I'm raising that because all 3 of those elements are in this bill. They're in 193 and 194. If you look at that, so if the tea leaves are there. The question is, Alabama, how will we respond? What is it that we're going to do? And I want us to really recognize in this moment that in this moment we're seeing the Ukraine war. We're seeing, well, the Russian war, where Ukraine is being under attack. There's 3 reasons. One is this is a government. This is a country that voted to establish themselves, that they wanted to be a democracy. And they're being attacked because of their choice to be a democracy. They're being attacked because there are those that believe that they don't have human rights, that they do not have the right of self-determination. They're being attacked because there are folks that don't think that they got sovereignty to even have a democracy. They're being attacked because there are those who have this notion of a national identity that does not include them, that they are superior to those. Now tell me how that's different in Alabama. Right. Do I have to go down the line the same? I can do a straight line from what is happening to Ukraine that is happening right here in America. Some folks don't have sovereignty. There are those that believe that there are some people that don't have human rights that should not be able to participate or create the kind of democracy that we desire and we deserve. And there are those that got an identity called white supremacy, because we're going to call it out, that believe that others that have an identity should be marginalized. And my message to you is we ready. We are coming. We are ready, just as there were only 600 people on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. As we stand here, we represent thousands, and we are ready. You will not continue to undermine the spirit, the right, the agency that we have. That's why we wanted to sing this song. That is one thing about strategy, but strategy cannot beat the spirit of the people when we rise up. Thank you.
And so we say amen. Amen. Our last speaker is Vice President of the League of Women Voters for Greater Birmingham, and she is my Vice President, Ms. Cindy Lowry. She represents the community in a lot of other different ways, and she'll probably share that with you. Ms. Lowry. Okay, we're gonna hear from Rebecca from Alabama Rise, and she will be followed by Cindy Lowry. I won't come back up.
I just want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this event today, and especially all the powerful speakers who went before me. Like you all, Alabama Rise is concerned about the level of effort being put into creating barriers to voting access, as we've heard today. But we're also heartened by a number of positive pieces of legislation that will move us in the right direction and improve voting access for all Alabamians. Specifically, there are 2 key categories that would help expand access to the ballot box. First, there are 3 bills that would make it easier for formerly incarcerated to vote. Representative Laura Hall's HB 167 would allow an inmate identification card to be used as a valid ID for voting. And Representative Laura Hall's HB 53 and Senator Linda Coleman Madison's HB 6 would eliminate the application requirement for voting rights restoration. And there are 3 bills that would make it easier for all Alabamians to vote, especially low-income individuals and people of color. Representative Adeline Clark's HB 103 would authorize early voting. Representative Thomas Jackson's HB 217 would authorize no excuse absentee voting. and Representative Prince Chestnut's HB 257 would create a process for automatic voter registration. So while it's important to mobilize against the harmful bills that we're discussing today, it is equally important to support these 6 bills that would make it easier for every Alabamian to vote and participate in our democracy. Thank you.
All right, what an amazing group we have standing behind us. There, and I see these beautiful young faces in the crowd. And when I think about voting, I think about when I was young. There are many rites of passage that we look forward to when we're young. But for me, getting to register to vote and getting to vote was the most exciting. I had taken a government class my senior year in high school, and it lit the fire for democracy in me. The passion you heard on display today was lit in me for good. Now, I don't recall the actual act of registering to vote. Could that have been because as a white woman who had a driver's license in transportation, it was an easy thing for me to do? Most likely. Now, fast forward to today, and I'm a proud volunteer board member for the League of Women Voters of Greater Birmingham. One of the largest leagues in the state. And all of our local leagues across the state are made up of hardworking volunteers. These volunteers participate regularly in voter registration and education efforts everywhere from the Salvation Army to high schools to community events. They get to know the local election officials in their communities and rely on them to ensure we are getting accurate information out to the public when it comes to local elections. We actively work with other local nonprofits like you see on this display today to educate voters about a variety of nonpartisan issues that affect Alabamians every day. And these volunteers are also trained volunteers to work to restore the rights of voters who have had a criminal record. All of this work is done with the goal of ensuring everyone can have that privilege I had of getting excited about voting, and everyone can have that passion for democracy lit in them. Many courageous people fought hard for these rights. We cannot let them down now. All the speakers you've heard here today have the same passion and the same goal for Alabamians. But HB 194 does not work to further that dream. This bill will result in making it harder for community groups and nonprofits like ours to do this work. Regardless of what the sponsors say it will do, it is trying to fix a wrong that is not there. Instead, our legislators should be working with nonprofits and communities all across Alabama to make voter registration and voter education and outreach accessible to all Alabamians, and to remove any barriers to this most fundamental right of having a voice in our democracy. Creating more barriers and criminalizing those who try to help is the wrong direction. We will never have a fair Alabama election until everyone can register and vote without question. That's right. So that's our legislators to do. No, no. HB 194. Thank you.
No, HB 194. Thank you to all of the organizations who appeared today. We stand before you today talking about HB 194, and then we heard some people bring up 193, and we heard a few good bills brought up. But let me just say one thing. Bad bills can wipe out a good bill that may make it. So we have to pay attention to those bad bills.
That's right.
There's a man who found a way to move faith from the pews to the city, and his name was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He often said, the arc of the moral universe is law, and it bends towards justice. What did he mean? He meant that even though justice may seem slow in coming, it will surely come when groups like us, groups like these stick together, and people like you out there in that audience who fight for it. He meant that change may take a long time, but we're hoping this won't, because we got election coming up and we need people to vote. In book 5 of Psalm 109, David cries to God for help as he wrestles with the issue of justice. An enemy had badly mistreated him using slander, lies, and curses to destroy him, even though David often prayed for his enemy. Basically, David wrote the psalm because of his character assassination. So David learned that instead of taking things into his own hands, he had to pray. He prayed that God would judge and punish his enemy. And sometimes change occurs with individual advocacy. That's basically the point I want to make here. Because David learned that. Sometimes change occurs through individual advocacy. And sometimes change occurs through policy reform. And sometimes change occurs through a lawsuit. Of course, I had to say that. I'm a lawyer. Each of us who works for social change is part of the mosaic of all who work for justice. And I want to thank all of these groups here today because they are a part of the mosaic of all who work for justice. Thank you.
All right.
And so now we are opening it up for questions for a few minutes, and we're opening it up and we're entertaining questions at this time. And we will indicate you can address who you want to answer it if you want to make a question directly to a particular organizational leader. Are there any questions?
Over there.
Right here. I work for AL.com.
Do you want the question person to come up forward? The person asked the question?
No, it's okay.
Okay, go right ahead.
And this could be for any person with an organization that takes part in these voter education outreach efforts. How would this bill stop those? I think the word we use that it would be intimidate or confuse or because I think the bill says they can't work directly with the election official or something like that. So can somebody explain how this would affect those kind of programs? What kind of programs it would affect and how it would affect them?
Okay, which organization wants to answer?
I'll take the first cut and then you guys join me. Hi, I'm Kathy Jones with the State League of Women Voters. The way we saw this is the same as it's occurring in other states across the country. We're seeing that these kind of bills that are written in such a way that it says that election officials and their staff cannot accept personal services from individuals or non-governmental organizations to support election-related activities such as voter registration, voter education, voter outreach. In the strictest term, in the strictest interpretation, you could say, well, we can't sit with an elected official and help them do if they're doing it. But what we've also experienced is when you start putting language in a bill in the law that makes it seem like that you could be committing a misdemeanor or a crime by participating in voter registration, education, and outreach, then you're going to start seeing a chilling effect on all sides. And that's the concern, is that the bill is poorly written in that regard, that it needs to be really clear. If Representative Allen is saying it's not supposed to hold us up, he needs to strike that whole section.
This is Alabama. And when those who are opposed to democracy want to limit participation in it, they confuse it. We passed a law making official a statewide list of moral turpitude that two counties couldn't agree on what it was. Probate judges across the state couldn't agree on what it was. That's because it was intentionally written or unintentionally incompetently written to be so obtuse with different opinions to it. When I read this law, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a voter. I can understand why I could be intimidated because you're not sure. The elected officials can't be sure.
That's right.
If they'll violate the law or not. And nonprofits can't be sure. Somebody can say you are, and guess how you prove it? You take it to court. And different courts in Alabama disagree on it. My point is, why send something at its best so incompetent and at its worst so anti-democratic for a vote? We should defeat it.